And boom, according to that, I am live. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. My name is Yuko Simon. It is 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. 10:32 actually. How you all doing? I'm doing good. I know I set this up at the last minute, as I am prone to do. I see we've currently got 5 viewers, 2 likes. Um, and one of those viewers is me, so I suppose that means we've got a 50% like ratio. Yeah, thank you for rocking in and keeping me company, especially to December Clouds and Odie Jr. Nice for dropping a hello in there. If you're watching, it's okay to lurk, but I do appreciate if people drop in a quick hello. How's it going? Where you from? Is it morning? Is it afternoon? Is it evening where you are? Yeah. Japan is. I guess we're getting into what we call the nice time of year. It's getting colder, certainly, but we've had some nice sunsets lately. The cold and dry weather, the dryness is definitely starting. If you are new to Japan or just coming to Japan for the first time, this is where humidifiers. I never understood the concept of having humidifiers till I came to Japan. New Zealand is just basically humid and damp all year round, winter and summer. So, and I always thought that, if you want to be healthy, you want to go somewhere dry. Because you associate the dampness, particularly in winter, with being cold. So when I heard that Tokyo is like bone dry all of winter, I thought, great. And then I couldn't understand why my nose was always bleeding and my throat was always sore, and why I was always getting sick and catching something new before I got better. And it's just because the back of your throat and your nose get so dry and cracked up and horrible, and germs just get stuck in it. So the only way you can actually protect your body against that stuff is to humidify and drink lots of water and gargle, which we've all been learning to do with COVID and so on. But yes, it's definitely, I just pulled the humidifier out this week. It's one of those things that when I first got to Japan, I didn't have anything and I was sick all the time. And I was asking my friends at work, like, what can I do about this? And they said, oh, it's the humidity. And they told me to get a pot and take the lid off. But keep an eye on it because this is something that university students do. But, apparently, yeah, you can be careful. If it runs out of water, it can become an electrical fire. And I actually had that happen one time. So then I decided to invest. And they're not very expensive into getting a proper humidifier. And yeah, it'll change your life in this part of the world. But yeah, that said, it's been lovely. Quentin Rankin asked, did I put a link on my Twitter page? I did indeed. In fact, I literally just posted it like 2 minutes before I started the stream. So it was all last minute. But yeah, police stories. I don't have a lot of interesting police stories, but I can definitely do some police stories. Yes, more fun police, not the actual police. It's funny in Japan. I mean, actually, I think the police get a kind of a harder time than they deserve sometimes, or sometimes they deserve it. But yes, I'm just talking about generally the return of elderly regulating fun and youthfulness, which is definitely happening. Starting with the Shibuya, got the guy down the bottom there, the Shibuya Shotengai Kyokai Rijicho, the head of the shop association in Shibuya there. So definitely going to talk about that. Yeah, Aaron just got the notification. Big fan of Justice there. Okay, good to hear that. We've got Vince back. Hey, good to have Vince back. I don't recognize the handle name, so actually, although by your name it sounds like you're back, so that's good. But yes, we commenting in from Vince back. I do appreciate the hi. We've got Aaron, of course. Great to see you as always. Wonderful moderator. And Kerberos Tenchi, you're here. What did I miss? Probably just some squirrels, right? Indeed, just squirrels. Talking about humidity at the moment. Pretty hard-hitting topics here. One thing we'll talk about today, I'll save it for when we get into the topics. But of course, awful what's happened in Korea. And, I think all the more chilling because it's exactly the kind of thing that can and has happened in Japan in the past. So there's no, it feels very close to home actually, and I think it does for Japanese people as well. I don't think there's any of the rivalry or the sort of, oh, this is them again, kind of a thing with Korea at all. On this kind of thing, this is something where, it's basically like it happened in Japan, and Japanese people were involved, as were a lot of people, of course. So we'll talk about that later on. But yeah. Other than that, I mean, it just continues to be a quiet week. I'm feeling better, by the way. I think feeling like an old man last week talking about how I threw out my back. I guess, yes, I do have to actually be careful about these things a little bit more. And I must admit, it spooked me a bit about doing kickboxing, although I definitely want to run. So I am going to go out running tomorrow for the first time since I threw out my back last Thursday, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to take it very, very, very easy. But yeah, there's one thing. There's a with my watch. This is a different band to the one I think I showed last time. But to get cardio stats, you've got to do like 3 20-minute runs, and I've done a whole bunch, and it's not working. But they told me I've got to do it in a specific way. So I guess this is how I can sort of build it back up. So hopefully we'll get better soon. But I'm feeling better. It's still not 100%, but it's probably good enough to do a light run, I'm hoping. Anyway, I'll test it out. Oh, nice to see we've got Keto Croy. Good morning from the Midwest. Good to have you in here in the Midwest. Whenever you say the Midwest, it's funny. I've heard people describe the Midwest as like Ohio, which if you think about it, it's like the east of America. So, but I kind of imagine that as being the Midwest when people say that. I guess one of those sorts of states around there anyway. But anyway, good to have you in the chat. Nice to have you in here. Yeah, I hope that my link is showing up in Twitter. I must admit I'm now paranoid that it didn't post. Oh yeah, in fact, actually, Unseen Japan even clicked on. They're massive at the moment. I share their content here frequently, and so I think you know about Unseen Japan. That they have a YouTube channel where they produce great, really well researched and prepared topics, and they write good blogs. And they did some tweet that went viral during the week, it seems, and they've just skyrocketed to like 60,000 followers on Twitter. So doing very, very well. I'm not sure if I have any of their stuff this week, but nice to see them acknowledging the notice of the episode. Milchman 2, time change in Europe. I'm on earlier now. See, yeah, and I've become a convert. I used to make fun of people. I used to go, New Zealand has daylight saving. Most of Australia has daylight saving, but Queensland, the Texas of Australia, does not have daylight saving. And if you want to know why, you just look at the letters page to the Brisbane Courier Mail newspaper, and you can see people saying, well, the extra hour of sunshine will fade my curtains faster, which pretty much sums up. It's kind of a Brisbane, Queensland's like the southeast Queensland's like Florida of Australia, and the rest of it's like rural Texas. It's a state with many, literally someone robbing a bank with a crocodile is the kind of thing that might happen in Gold Coast and the rest of the state. It's kind of nutty there anyway. And that's the only place in the world I knew other than Japan without daylight saving. But now that I've been here for 23 years and not had daylight saving, and particularly working cross-border with people in both Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere, I get really annoyed at how the time differences change because of daylight saving and keeping track of it. And around that, yeah, I've become kind of a convert to not having daylight saving, even though it would be nice to have an hour of extra sunshine during the summer. Well, truth is, I guess I'm working in an office anyway and commuting by train or staying at home, so maybe it doesn't make that much difference. But yeah, I've definitely come to appreciate that. Indiana is definitely the Midwest. Okay, if you say Indiana, I must admit I think of the movie Smokey and the Bandit. Wow, showing my age there probably. They don't make movies like that anymore, but that's how I got to know like American geography pretty much. I mean, that's pretty much what that movie was. So yes, indeed. Quint Ranked, here we talk about the cows being confused by the time change. Yes, I'm sure they show up to work early, nobody's there. It's very confusing for the cows. Pretty tough. So yes, isn't there an app for that? Keeping in track of it? Time difference? Well, yeah, but it can still sneak up on you, I guess, when the daylight saving happens all of a sudden. It's 10:40. It's great to see so many people rocked into here. We've got 7 concurrent viewers, so not a like with 4 likes, though, however, so I do appreciate that. Why don't we just jump in? Let's get into the stories. Again, not a lot of topics this week, so we'll see how far we go. First, I just want to call out this channel. I called out a bunch of channels and videos just during the week that I've been watching lately that I like. This is not Japan related, but I think in the current circumstances, this YouTube channel 1420. There's another channel that does sort of a similar thing in the Middle East. It's a Pop Vox channel in Russia where they walk around and they ask people at times provocative questions like, do you support using nuclear weapons against the collective West? But it's kind of funny. It's kind of subversive. Like you can kind of tell the attitudes behind the show are anti the Russian government and anti the war and the silliness that's going on. But at the same time, they also realize that they're probably at risk of being questioned and censored or whatever if they're too direct about it. So they actually approach it by being kind of it's good in the sense that they approach people using the vocabulary of Russian patriotic television to show you how adversely Russians react to their government. And some people agree, by the way, and they show that as well. And they're very polite to each one, but you can sort of see what's going on. And as much as, yeah, it's very easy, I personally am, like I'm, still wrapped up in the war in Ukraine and very anti what Russia is doing across the board. And the fact that the idea that anyone could make any sort of excuses, geopolitical, historical, or whatever, for what Russia is actually doing, there's no justification for what they're doing. And every bad thing that happens to Russia militarily, they have coming. But it's easy in the mix of that to blame the Russian people, or to, in fact, it is Russian people that are getting mobilized and are in that war at the moment. But yeah, you get wrapped up in the dehumanization thing. And what I love about this channel is it just reminds you that it's just it's just a messed up country, messed up in the same way that we're all messed up, with a lot of pretty cool people and a lot of people who feel powerless at this about the situation at the moment. Of course, much more so in Ukraine. But again, it's nice to just remember that Russians are people. And actually, I really appreciate what this channel does. It just makes you, it shows a bunch of perspectives, and yet you can sort of see that these are normal people. So I've been watching this channel and kind of appreciating the balance it brings, in spite of the fact I've generally been becoming quite anti-Russian, I suppose, lately. But I do really appreciate this channel, and I encourage people to check it out. Another video that I watched during the week, or in fact, before I jump into that, Quint Rankit, 1420 is a bit circumspect, however. Did I see the woman with the stuffed mouse? Yes, I did. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's funny because they used her in multiple videos. Like, I think there was another video where they just asked people, how old are you? And that just shows sometimes people like laugh and react. Oh, in fact, okay, so now there's two videos you maybe want to talk about. One, she'll just give a random answer, but yes, she started like blurting Russian patriotic propaganda using a stuffed mouse, which he was carrying for some reason, like a doll, and having it speak in a cutesy. Yes, that was disturbing. But again, I kind of appreciate even seeing the drunks and the nut jobs and the nationalists, as well as the normal people, or people that look normal to me. But that's kind of what I appreciate about that channel, that they put them both on. I did like the very recent video, which I thought was wonderfully subversive, where they went around with a petition asking the government. Apparently Russian propaganda uses this expression for, they don't say America is doing this or Europe is doing this. They say the collective West is really fighting against Russia and Ukraine and is trying to destroy Russia. And they went around using the rhetoric of the ultra-nationalist television. They walked around in parks in a rural town near Moscow, asking people, "Would you please sign a petition asking Vladimir Vladimirovich to nuke the collective West?" To see if anyone would sign it. And he got the looks that he got, like people like F off and running away, and couldn't get a single signature for their petition. Even and they weren't doing it. They were doing it in a very neutral way, but people looking at them like, what the hell is wrong with you? And when they realized they had no signatures, they said, okay, social experiment, now we're going to offer people a free beer if they sign. And when they did, everybody signed. And they said, so the conclusion is that you and the West should know there's only a single beer between Russia nuking the entire collective West. But you can see all the students were like, I don't give a shit. I'm like, yes, if there's a beer, I'll sign whatever you've got. Kind of a thing. It was a very good video. And again, it's just worth watching. And the attitude, you can tell that they're trying to make what they make without being too direct, so that they don't get all rounded up. So it's a very good channel anyway. Thomas Morris, good to see you there in the chat. DJ Sunny Side Up, good to see you. Good to see you indeed. Did I watch the recent video of your daughter in the monkey park chasing the pigeons? I did not see that video. I think I see that you tag me sometimes, so I'll check it out if you're asking. In a monkey mask chasing the pigeons. That sounds like something. I will go check that out. The J Vlog, good to see you. Late to the party, salutations. Yeah. So anyway, next video, I suppose it's I guess it'll start auto playing if I highlight it too much, so I don't want it to do that. I wish I could just pause it. Well, it's anyway the channel of Currently Hannah. I think And I mentioned this last week. I'm wondering if I did mention this last week. She is an Australian creator. I think she actually works with one of the big MCNs in Japan. She makes well-produced, high-quality travel vlogs all around Japan. I mean, and the sort of vlogs that make people want to buy air tickets to come to Japan and spend lots of money. And she does this very well. She's been doing it for a long time. Essentially, it's her business. She's, not as big as like abroad in Japan, but it's very much in that sort of a vein. And I think she contributes on a similar level to Japan. And apparently, when she applied, she's been here for 8 years, and when she applied for a working visa to extend her working in Japan based on being sort of running her own business around making these videos. Apparently, there was some sort of. She says there was a problem with the documentation at immigration. Immigration sort of told her the best way to resolve it is for her to leave the country and reapply and come back again. Which maybe sounds easy from a purely procedural perspective, but when you consider that they're telling someone who's lived here for 8 years, to pack up and leave the country, having, I believe, a boyfriend that she lives with here and a business here, and having no plans to leave the country all of a sudden, having an apartment that you're paying rent, it's kind of like going to jail. It's even worse than going to jail in some ways because you can't even have visitors, I suppose. So yeah, she had to go back to Australia. It sounds like she is traveling back to Japan or is coming back. So hopefully she's getting things sorted out. But again, you talk about a Japan that's successful with tourism in spite of itself. This is exactly the kind of case where, yes, she's probably not a conventional. If you had Dentsu, some big advertising company or Japanese company, backing your visa or whatever, and filling out all the forms correctly, of course, you'd have no problem. But frankly, it's these kinds of people that are having much more impact, positive impact for stimulating the Japanese economy with foreign revenue and tourists that Japan should be encouraging to stay and supporting. And, not only are they not, and it's okay for them not even to support because she's doing a great job on her own. But the fact that they actually, basically kicked her out of the country is just so ridiculous, and it shows how, again, the cool Japan thing really was the Japanese government trying to get on the bandwagon of Japan being successful without it and almost trying to ruin it. And you know what? Japan doesn't have to be cool. The Japanese government doesn't have to be cool. It doesn't have to understand how to market itself perfectly. It just has to not sabotage it, which I feel like they're doing with currently Hannah. She did a video explaining the situation, which was like, geez, that's just such a mess. So I feel bad for her, and I again, it's something for what she's doing. It's the sort of thing I think that there should be a special category, a special status of people who actually promote and enrich. She's literally there promoting and enriching Japan, and Japan's not doing right by her. And I think that even within the working visa category, she should get special favorable treatment, actually. And I really hope she sorts the mess out. Yeah, December Clouds. Would she, the video lady, have trouble getting PR since she had to leave? I'm not sure. I think, the bar is relatively low nowadays. I think nowadays, arguably she could have applied for PR. I think it's typically, the rule is still 10 years and 5 years with special circumstances, like if you're married or if you've provided special contributions or whatever. But lately, it used to be I waited for 10 years, even though I was married before I was here for 10 years. But I think, lately they're handing out PR in 5 years after 5 years residency more than they were in the past. They're lowering the bar for that. There again, I suppose I don't know if not having a Japanese spouse would work against her on that, but I don't know how that works, and I don't know that it's even her plan to have permanent residency in Japan. But there again, I guess that would be one solution for her, but just the fact that she's here working and generating, contributing to the economy and getting kicked out is just ridiculous. DJ Sunnyside Up asked, did I watch the Jake Paul versus Anderson Silva fight? Well, as I understand, you're supposed to pay to watch it. And I'm sure there are ways to watch it without paying. I would be morbidly curious to watch the highlights of it. I do watch MMA, like highlights and stuff on YouTube. But honestly, it's just kind of morbidly curious. Look, Anderson Silva wasn't doing MMA. He was doing boxing, and he's 47 years old. Still a professional striker, so no question, Jake Paul. It still is an achievement of sorts, but at the same time, it still is nothing close to beating a proper boxer, professional boxer, or winning a proper MMA fight, which he would have undoubtedly lost even to a 47-year-old Anderson Silva if he'd been doing jiu-jitsu. So I don't know. I saw the BBC coverage and the sort of end of it. I haven't seen anything of the fight yet, but I don't know. Was it good? I mean, I'd rather watch a real fight, honestly, rather than. I think he's moved beyond just being a YouTuber, doing this for views. I think he's sincerely trying to be a good fighter, and he is a good fighter, no doubt. But at that level, I'm not convinced he really is at that level yet. Maybe that's what he'll become and do it, and good luck to him. But I'd like to see a real fight, not a circus. So, yeah, I haven't seen it, but I must admit I'm curious to see what happens. But yeah. Anyway, Shinjuku Gochome says you can get PR after as little as 1 year if you're on a high school worker visa. Really? Have they lowered the bar that much? 1 year? I know that they can, after 1 year, you can get like a 3 or 5 year working visa. I've never heard of 1 year just from a working visa, even in special circumstances. Maybe they made it that easy. I mean, I think it should be that easy. That is the case in New Zealand, that you can get permanent residency after 1 year. But I don't know that Japan's handing them out that easily yet. Although I have heard that it's easy, that it's getting easier. Again, not Japan news, but I guess news that affects us all, particularly that I spend most of my week outside of the show on Twitter. This going around on Twitter that Lex Luthor buys a Daily Planet. I mean, literally an anti-Twitter person fighting with Twitter, wanting to, censored by Twitter, fighting in court against Twitter, who took over the company and now is firing everybody at Twitter. I don't know what to make of the whole Musk thing. I think I say this about, many people like Musk, that I think Musk is successful and has achieved the things that he has achieved because he's, at best, except he's not a normal person. Normal, if normal everyday people could become as rich as him and start space companies and, electric car companies and so on, then, everyone, I suppose, would be doing it. But, so I guess him acting like an asshole, I think is just part of what got him to be where he is. Personally, I love Twitter, and all I want is someone who will leave it be. And I think that the ideas that he's been saying at different times, that that censorship or whatever is going to be, that this paranoia, I think in American conservative circles, that social media is all being managed by some kind of left-wing conspiracy to censor conservatives and so on, like not just to, and that somehow they're restricting freedom of, diverse political views and all of this stuff, and how when he comes on, he's going to go back and it's going to be all free speech. There are some working experiments now of unrestricted freedom of speech on the internet. They are called 8chan and 4chan and Gab, and the problem, Parler was another example. And what happens with these sites is when people find that out, it's not just conservative viewpoints. In fact, it's usually not conservative viewpoints that are the problem. It's the death threats and terrorism threats, and the sort of doxing, and it's all the other misbehavior. I mean, the hate speech comes into it as well. But at the end of the day, when you have a website that's okay with hate speech, once you check that the green light is there, pretty soon people are planning attacks on politicians' homes and whatnot, and following through and doing it. And this was the case with Parler, that they basically they were not responding to requests to take down, contents that involve planning crimes like murders and so on. And the result was they got taken down, everyone sort of said that was that looked like political censorship, but because there's a lot of political speech on the site, but it wasn't the political speech that it got taken down for. It was for all of the other stuff. And I think as easy as it is to say, oh, now that Musk is back, Twitter, Trump's going to be back on Twitter, and they're going to have a more balanced moderation policy. What I think, my prediction is that they're going to discover that when they actually look at the moderation policy, one, they're going to discover moderation policies are hard, and two, yeah, you're going to end up at the same place, honestly. I mean, if you want to operate a site that doesn't host death threats and criminal speech, then pretty much you're going to find it's not going to look very different to what it is. And the problem with the people being censored is not their political views most of the time. I really think that. So, and he's already backtracking on that, realizing that advertisers are looking to already move off the site and so on. So, yeah, it's that between that and him like cleaning out, the Twitter stuff. I really hope he doesn't lay waste to it. Remember also that not all of Musk's businesses are successful. SpaceX and Tesla are spectacularly successful. But there are companies like Neuralink and Solar City and a bunch of other businesses that he's, the Hyperloop and so on, that haven't gone anywhere. And, I do hope he doesn't Gordon Gekko Twitter. I don't think that's objective, but we'll see what happens with it anyway. So curious what people think about that. But yeah, I think he's going to learn that the problems that he wanted, that he expressed dissatisfaction with and wanted to solve, are not going to be as easy. In fact, I'll be surprised if he does a better job at it than the previous management. Not that they maybe did the perfect job. I really think they did the best that they could. And I do think that Twitter is still much better at this sort of thing than, for example, Facebook or other players are. And the reason in fact, I love Twitter and I do not like Facebook is Twitter is a very basic service that hardly makes any money, but it's a service for the people who use it, basically. Primarily, there's advertising on it because they've got to make some money. Whereas Facebook, and all of its, Instagram, all its other services as well, is a service where the product is the people who use the site. They're not doing anything for us. They want to be convenient enough to keep us on the site, but it's a site where you're proactively being manipulated. I think this happens a little bit with the algorithms on Twitter as well, but I still much prefer, I feel like Twitter is more neutral myself. So we'll see anyway. So yeah. DJ Sunny Side Up asked, did I talk about Kanye West yet? No, I've not talked about Kanye West ever, except there's another example of someone who's probably the holiness and genius is all probably mixed together with him, just the same as with Musk. I can't even fathom how he gets away with he gets away with what he gets away with because he's very good at music, which is fair enough to a point. But I think he's testing the boundaries, and thank heavens he's found out that boundaries exist. He's getting exactly what he deserves at the moment. JVlog, yeah, I'm sorry if you're getting, don't put notifications on my stuff. Just take a look every now and then. Especially yesterday during the rugby, I did post more than usual. So I apologize about that. But wow, quit rank it. I'm pretty sure the death threats are illegal. Hate speech is allowed. I hate Nazis. Yeah. Well, different countries, but basically criminal stuff which you can actually get a subpoena to and legally required to take down, which is illegal speech. So yes, and hate speech, saying that's right. I hate Facebook is perfectly fine. Quentin Rankin, I don't know all the details, but pretty sure there are lawsuits now for Section 230, so the moderation landscape is sure to change. Well, yeah, and it's kind of funny because people don't really know what they want with that. They want their own speech to be free and uncensored, and yet if you sue to have Section 230, that makes that makes Twitter accountable for all of the speech that's on its site, as if it's a publisher, which means it has to review and approve everything. So, again, if Section 230 gets tossed out of the what are the FCC regulations or whatever, but basically Section 230 is the section which allows social media companies to avoid being, so long as they have adequate moderation, they are not accountable as publishers for the content that's published on those sites. It's a safe harbor. And yeah, they basically, because conservatives are not happy with the way that they're censoring, and left wing people are generally not happy that they're censoring enough. They're talking about taking this out and making Facebook and Twitter accountable for what they publish on their sites, which is going to force them to censor more. It's going to make them effectively magazine publishers, which will choose which letters to the editor to publish, which is going to be impossible to do. And for sure, it's going to change. And I think people are complaining without having a clear idea of what the solution is, and sometimes not realizing that they're aiming for the opposite of what they really want to achieve. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that the twits that ran Twitter were left-leaning and tried to get rid of people that they disagreed with. Well, again, everybody thinks that someone else is out to get them, but I do think that Twitter is probably, I think they've done the best that they could, and we'll find out soon, given that they're going to be replacing all of those people. Quinn Rankett, did I happen to find any of Kanye's interview with Lex Friedman? I did not. I didn't see any of that. And I don't care to see. Honestly, I don't want to see. I'm close to. I've got the word Trump blocked on Twitter. I don't see any tweet which mentions his name. I don't see, just because there's just so much ridiculousness associated with it. Kanye is not at that point yet, but he's pretty close. I don't give a look. He's a stupid person who's very good at music and got rich, and too many people listen to. I don't want to exacerbate the problem by watching any interview where he says more stupid stuff. That's pretty much how I look at it. Ida, good to see you, Ida. The J-Vlog, Elon's unsunned next boom is the Boring Company. Well, that's right. It's growing many times faster and better than SpaceX. Really? I thought that company was more or less dead. I mean, the tunnel in Las Vegas is kind of a joyride from what I can see. I would ride it. I would ride it. But the Boring Company, I hope that it happens. But yes, your mama indeed, Thomas Morris. Atomic Tom, good to see you there in the chat. Yeah, the Kanye thing is just too stupid for too stupid to handle. The yen. So the yen, after dipping for a time, going from like 140 something down to like 142, we discovered in September that the Ministry of Finance, not the Bank of Japan, actually, when the US dollar was getting too valuable and the yen was getting too cheap, the Japanese Ministry of Finance quietly, apparently, went into its safe of US dollars and got the wheelbarrow and piled up $50 billion in US currency that the Japanese government was storing, and lit it on fire and said, "Does this look so expensive to you now?" And as a result, the US dollar went down and the Japanese yen went up. Again, it looked like they were trying to stop the yen from going down to 150 yen to the US dollar. And it worked. It went down to 142. However, basically this week, the yen is now back at the same level it was when the Japanese Ministry of Finance set all that money on fire. So the question is, are they going to start lighting more money on fire, or are they just going to, let it go now? Now, I've pointed out, well, okay, so what was the point of that? Now we're back exactly where we started when they set the money on. I mean, they didn't literally set the money on fire, but they did sell off all the US dollar holdings. And some people pointed out that we might be looking, the yen might have collapsed. By now, if they hadn't done that, it might have slipped to 150, 155, 160. And it might still be heading there. I've heard people say it might head to 165. I really hope it doesn't. It's no good for me. I can't travel anywhere at the moment with the yen at this low value. But it does really look like in Japan they've just been using the same tool of printing money endlessly, devaluing the yen. And having zero or below zero interest rates. And, the American government's doing the opposite. They're raising interest rates, so it's a better place to go put your money and store it at the moment. And no amount of setting US dollars on fire is going to change that. So, yeah. Quit ranking. It seems a few people here like Lex. I like Lex. Maybe we should recommend it. Oh, you mean the website or Lex Luthor? I like Lex Luthor. I think he's a cool villain. But yeah, maybe we should recommend him to. Oh, you mean the interview of Kanye? I don't want to watch any interviews of Kanye, please. No more Kanye. Honestly, the stupid just hurts my brain when I hear him talking. Again, stick to the music. The music is fine, and Elon, stick to the cars and the rockets. all good. I love that stuff. But please, whenever I hear them talking about anything else, I just want to bang my head on the table. Fun police. We have this gentleman. It's kind of funny. Shibuya, no longer the youth capital of Tokyo. That's really now moved over to Harajuku. Although certainly there was a thing. It's not. It's kind of still the case that really Shinjuku, Shibuya isn't really a place that people over 25 years old really hang out that long. It used to be something would say openly that people over 25 shouldn't be in Shibuya, kind of a thing. Kind of mature 25 to 30-year-olds would hang out in Shinjuku. Sort of 18 to 25-year-olds in Shibuya, and sort of under 20s in Harajuku. Um, this is like 20 years ago. I think that Shibuya is still a youth neighborhood, but maybe not quite as much. But however, the gentleman in the caption here is actually he is the head of the Shibuya Central Shop Owners Association, and it's kind of funny. So this is someone from the shop owners of the district that basically makes its entire business and brand of being associated with being a youth town. And they don't like Halloween. They don't like all the young people wearing costumes and celebrating Halloween, which has been, it's been a bit quieter with the pandemic, of course, but it's really become bigger than Christmas. It's become sort of one of the biggest party nights of the year in Japan, and it's caused basically people to pile into Shibuya. However, yes, he's not happy about it. He's saying that it's not even Halloween anymore. It's just a parade of perverts, a costume pageant of perversion. I see the translation at the top. Basically he's saying that we have to shut down all of these people coming here for Halloween. I don't know if he thinks they should be holding shogi tournaments or, something like that instead, or if he just wants to convert it to an old person's town. Again, the wonderful thing about Tokyo is that because it's so densely populated that, neighborhoods become defined by demographics and hobbies. And just in the same way that Shibuya is a neighborhood for under 25s, there's a neighborhood for over 60s on the Yamanote line as well called Sugamo. And it's kind of funny. I used to talk a lot on the show about how Japan has was falling into this trend where, just as Japan is becoming the, thank you, Aaron, quick clicking there. Just as Japan is becoming the most elderly society in the world, and where elderly are rapidly now, retirees are on the verge of becoming like 30% of the population, and are far more numerous than people under 30, for example, due to the low birth rates. So you have this society which was increasingly becoming one where elderly are disapproving of youth and regulate youth. Basically, they use their numbers and their influence and the power that you inherently have when you're wealthy and you have assets and you're older. But when you multiply that by outnumbering and outvoting youth to proactively all of the things that I was told when I was studying Japanese back in the 1980s and 1990s. In high school in New Zealand, that Japan's going to have this demographic reckoning that's going to happen based on its birth rates, where it's likely to bring elderly into conflict with youth, and you could really see that as a theme throughout the news until the pandemic. And I must admit, the last 2 years I haven't really seen many stories like this, but one of the flashpoints is definitely the Yamanote. Well, one was the Yamanote line parties, and one was the Halloween stuff happening in Shibuya. And this year, they've basically banned all alcohol or drinking in public in Shibuya on the night of Halloween, on tomorrow night. Which is funny because you go to Shimbashi and you can find elderly drunk falling over and throwing up all over the place, salarymen, any weekday of the year since the 1950s, and that's all. Those are politicians and company workers and so on. And they're allowed to do that. Young people are not allowed to go to Shibuya and party in the streets for one night in the year. You think about Hanami, hundreds of thousands of people get drunk in Yoyogi Park. And yet Shibuya basically doesn't want anything to do with the people who make its brand, basically, who make Shibuya what Shibuya is. And they're basically just anti-people cosplaying and being rowdy. Just come here, spend money, go home. And as I always say, youth by every metric are, infinitely better They are better in every way than the youth of the 1960s and 70s in Japan. People of the age of that man from the Shop Owners Association against cosplaying, pretty timid and pretty mild, like 21-year-olds that go into Shibuya for Halloween. Back in his day when he was 21, back in the early 1970s, which would be my guess from his appearance, people 2021 were literally like bombing banks and government buildings and shooting people, having riots. They closed down the universities for a number of years. They were murdering and killing and, carrying out, joining the Red Army and bombing Middle East airliners. I mean, and if you see movies and you understand anything about the culture of that time of Japan until really the late 1970s, it was complete anarchy. And it was caused by these out of control, and some would now say, in retrospect, they believed that they were being idealistic, but, they were pretty self-centered, honestly, and selfish and really completely gone wild youth of Japan from that period. The youth of Japan today are like nothing compared to that. They should be honestly grateful to have such great kids nowadays. But yes, that's being regulated. That said, of course, there are challenges, which includes, I suppose I should jump next to what's happened at the moment in Korea, which is, of course, pretty awful situation there. And this is something which I suppose is a legitimate concern that's always happened in Shibuya. In fact, so a few things about, this is an unthinkable tragedy, and I don't know where to start with this. I mean, it's a necessary transition. Itaewon, the neighborhood that this happened in, is more the Roppongi than the Shibuya of Seoul. I've been to Seoul like a bunch of times for work. I've been there backpacking. I first went there in 1999. Almost every time I've been to Itaewon. When I first went to Itaewon, 1999, it was a grungier, more horrible version of the worst parts of Roppongi. It was basically all US bases. Every bar had a sign above it saying Koreans only or no Koreans on it. It was literally segregated, mainly because of the US forces there. I went to the museum there. I went out for dinner there. I met a couple of Russians and their girlfriends who took me out drinking and had a crazy night there. And yet when I went back in later years, I saw all of, the sidewalks were all under construction. There wasn't consistent concrete everywhere. You would walk on dirt on the sidewalks there, still in 1999. And yet, even like 2010, 2013, 2015, Korea as a whole, but certainly Itaewon became this dramatically tidy, upmarket neighborhood. And it's become like an Omotesando, like one of Tokyo's fancier neighborhoods, and it arguably even outdoes that. Koreans are now wealthier than Japanese on average, and you go to a place like that and you see it. So you've got this neighborhood that used to be a really horrible sort of Yokosuka, Roppongi type neighborhood that's become this very upmarket neighborhood, and where people, I guess, a bit like the Shibuya thing, it looks like they congregated to have Halloween parties and dress up. It's one of these things like we have in many places in Tokyo, arguably including, they showed on the news tonight, Spain-Zaka, which goes off Sentokai. But there are parts of even Shibuya which are very similar, where they're on a slope and they're very narrow streets, like just a few meters wide, like you can barely drive a car down, that exist, that could be these funnel points if there aren't proper crowd control. Japan knows, anywhere with high populations knows the risk of not having proper crowd control where you have this sort of thing. Japan in 2001, just after I came to Japan, had the Akashi Bridge disaster, which was basically it was a fireworks festival, but like you have all over Japan with hundreds of thousands of people. In this particular place, I think it's in Kobe or, the Hyogo prefecture, all the crowds, 100,000 people, had to go over like a 6-lane highway to get to the viewing site of the fireworks, which meant going over a pedestrian bridge, which in normal times would be fine, but it literally created like a huge funnel. It led to a crash and 11 people were killed. And there was a reflection that it was basically lack of crowd control or crowd management that really led to that. There was a huge tragedy at the time. And I think when people see the crowds in places like Shibuya, people still think of that tragedy in Akashi and Hyogo. And this is why it's become a feature of how Halloween supported it. I think the police deserve credit for actually having done a really great job with how they've managed the. On the one hand, they are kind of the fun police, telling people to keep moving along, and saying people to don't stand still and drink with an open can in public or whatever, and reminding people of the ordinances. But essentially, they're just making sure that things keep sort of flowing. And there's something like 300 police working in Shibuya again, just to make sure that these sorts of things like what happened in Korea don't happen. In fact, the most kind of the symbol of the way, I think the way that the police have positively been seen to manage these kind of crowds has been DJ Polis. They actually set up. Apparently they got like a young police officer up on like an elevated platform, like from a fire truck, with a bunch of loudspeakers, where they would start to like give quite friendly messages. But hey, everybody, have a good time, but remember, keep moving along. I don't think they were actually playing music, but people started calling them like the DJ Police. And it was kind of a mocking thing, but it kind of became kind of like a bit of a meme and a feature of the whole thing. But it did show that I think people were aware that this sort of thing can happen in Tokyo. In fact, probably if there weren't any police, it might have already happened. And it's out of mindfulness from this sort of thing having happened before that Japan very deliberately does manage this sort of thing. And again, maybe I'm sure there'll be lessons. I mean, we have to find out first of all exactly how this happened in Seoul, but I'm sure that this is very close to home. Japanese people, I mean, people from like 19 countries were involved. Japanese people were involved in this, and I think when people see this, they don't see this as something that happened in a foreign country so much as something that it is exactly the same sort of situation that could have happened here. And I think that's where it's really shocked people here in Japan. And it really hits a nerve. It really hits home here as it does everywhere. I mean, the fact 153 killed is just unthinkable. And it's just amazing to think that this can happen, that with people, just, yeah. So terribly sad, and terribly sad for all the families involved, and a real reminder of the need to, be careful in these situations. Yeah, Aaron saying, did I see how packed the street was? I saw a couple of videos, but yeah, then I realized when I saw the videos of the crush, like that's a video of like 100 people getting killed. And I kind of switched off, and some people tagged me on videos of that, and I asked them to untag me. I saw a couple and it was enough, and I didn't want to see anymore. But yeah, that's right. Apparently it was a side street on a slope, but still pretty horrific stuff. And again, it could happen anywhere, but certainly in Tokyo it really hit home. So yeah, very, very sad, and I hope that they can figure out ways to prevent it from happening again. Steps taken to not deal with properly mitigating possibly dangerous situations before they happen. That rubs me the wrong way. I'm not sure if I understand you correctly on that, Aaron. Well, normally the whole idea is, I mean, the whole thing about the whole DJ Police thing and the Shibuya way that they try to manage this and not have this kind of thing happen in Shibuya, I think a lot of people are kind of dismissive that this is just the police being self-important and being busybodies and telling people to move along. And in the end of the day, the success is always proved by nothing ever happening, which leaves sometimes unfairly a majority. It's like having militaries. People say that, you have a military in order to never have a war sometimes, and then people say, well, if we never have a war, why do we need a military? We can spend that money on other things. But, again, it's hard to justify the existence of something when the existence is justified by nothing ever happening. And that's kind of the case with the police in Shibuya, but this is exactly what arguably happens. Again, we don't know if this was the reason, but, when you don't have proper crowd control, this is what can happen. And so being prepared for something that might never happen, but you want to make sure that, but mitigating it before that happens is the idea. And I think that Japan was doing it, from knowledge, from having had this sort of thing happen before. DJ Sunny Sun Up, do I have a cold? Voice sounds dry. I do not have the humidifier on, but I'm going to turn it on after this, and it is a bit dry. My throat's been a bit messed up. Actually, it's been messed up for about a month, honestly, but yeah, I'm feeling it at the moment. I actually have a bottle of water here, which I might just have a drink, actually. Pardon me. Actually, that is much better. Thank you for that, DJ Sunny Side Up. Yeah, and I must admit, this is probably the longest I talk continuously to anyone all week. I do calls, but um, I think that's part of it. But it's definitely just that it's drier at the moment. So yes, that's definitely happening. Anyway, some other stories. I think I've talked a lot about Dentsu before, but a good story in Kyoto News, sort of a feature on how it's showing up with for example, with all of the corruption around the Olympics. And indeed, Rochelle Kopp came on to Tokyo Tonight a few weeks ago and talked about how even with the Guyane redevelopment, which is very tied up with the Olympics and all of those scandals, everything goes back to Japan's monopoly advertising company. Imagine if you had like, Madison Avenue, Mad Men, where there were no companies competing against, everything was just owned by one company. That is the reality of Japan. Dentsu is so big, they kind of make little fake companies to like pretend that they're competing for bids of work sometimes, and they're all owned by Dentsu. There's a few industries. I mean, this is kind of how Japan kind of works. There's a few oligopolies around different sectors. For recruiting, there's a company literally called Recruit. For advertising, there's basically Dentsu. There's very little meaningful competition, and it's amazing how much power they have when basically, if you want to do advertising in Japan, if you want to make commercials, if you want to sell commercials, if you want to, there's pretty much just one place you go to, and anywhere else you're just going to be sort of relegated. And they are aggressive. Like when you hear about how famous people are sort of blacklisted in Japan, that's Dentsu. At the end of the day, the TV and media industry is basically funded by advertising from Dentsu. And if Dentsu decides that they don't like somebody, or that person shouldn't be on TV anymore or on a show that they sponsor anymore, they disappear. So yeah, they sort of go into talking about again how they are tied up with all of the scandals associated with the Olympics, and yeah, definitely in a lot of industries, including, they touch on everything, even working in IT or working in other fields. Yeah, you find out that they are incredibly powerful. One of the most influential companies in Japan. And yet they're like 95% or more sales. They're a very small component of them that actually has anything to do with actual advertising or creativity. But yeah, they have a big stranglehold on the economy. It's a fascinating company. There's tons of things sort of written about them, but yeah, I noticed among the other things, I mean, how, yeah, again, Shu Kinpei, as they say in Japanese, Xi Jinping, again, just consolidating how he is on what, even by Chinese Communist Party standards, is against their own rules. He's above 65, and yet he's gone for another, for a third term, where he's only supposed to be, he's got to be under 65, and there's a 2-term limit. So he's pretty much becoming like the Kim Jong-un. He's pretty much just now ignoring even the rules that put restrictions on the very few restrictions that existed on power in China. And you'd think, well, okay, now he's got full power. He can sit back and relax. But no, he's actually just said again that he's going to secure interests over senkakus as China's historical duty, which just sounds like a bad Vladimir Putin impersonation. And, those islands, China never made a noise about those islands until 1975. And literally like months after they found oil reserves and gas reserves under the islands. That was the only time that they expressed a complaint. In the end of the day, even if China controlled them, even if there was legitimate proof that they controlled them 400 years ago, Japan controlled them without objection for 100 years from the 19th century. And they're in control of them now. And, so the idea that you can just start a war based on some rocks over a claim that's hundreds of years old and that was abandoned for 100 years, just is, ridiculous. Yeah. And again, you'd hope, looking at what's happening in Europe at the moment, that they wouldn't be getting into this sort of thing, but they are. Skipping along, Dan H. I forgot that Japan's clocks don't go back, says Dan H. That's right. They don't go anywhere. They just stay the same, which I've come to appreciate with time. Believe in yourself. Excellent to see you, and good to see Dan H. in the chat, indeed. Rugby, we've got, yesterday we had Japan play New Zealand, and Japan was damn good. It was New Zealand's B team. It wasn't the best team, but there again, even New Zealand's B team really, in past years, would have put 100 points on Japan, as it was, apart from a last-minute penalty. Japan was like within 4 points. There were moments where it was like, oh, is this going to be another South Africa like upset win to Japan? Japan played excellent, good rugby. As a New Zealand resident of Japan, it was funny. I found myself getting more excited. Japan was playing more exciting rugby, and I was getting. I wanted both teams to play well, but it was a great game. The crowd was great. The way that the game was played was great. It just shows how much better Japan has gotten at rugby, and not so much even that they're better at rugby. It's just that their standards are higher. They used to be okay with just dropping the ball and making stupid, unforced mistakes, and everyone seemed to be okay with losing by 100 points. No one ever got upset by it. But now they actually have standards where they actually go through a game and they don't make mistakes, and they don't like to lose. And look at them; they're competitive. So yeah, it was really a great game yesterday. But yeah, I must admit, I'm curious seeing what's going on in the chat there. I see Aaron saying, I think it's disappointing that they put so much into shutting down dissent, but they clearly didn't put enough resources into taking care of those people on the streets and at least making sure it didn't. Okay, so I've missed some context there. But we talk about with, um, oh yeah, the security resources is very noticeable in Seoul, the police and so on, and they have them to shut down protests. But that's right. Well, yeah, Korea has a pretty dark history, of course, with these sorts of accidents, some people are comparing this to the Seawall, to the ferry sinking. There are two incidents which I think are actually coming back to the Seoul thing. There's two things which jump to my mind, and I sort of didn't want to raise them because I don't want to pass early judgment on what happened here. But there was a case where there was a fire on a train at a train station. And the logical thing to do would be to open all the doors and let all the passengers out and deal with the fire. But instead, the train driver apparently panicked and apparently locked all of the doors on the train, locking the passengers in, and then himself escaped the train, leaving the passengers in the train. And dozens of passengers died from smoke and from the fire on a subway in Seoul. And the Seawall thing was a similar situation where the ship was sinking, and instead of ordering people to abandon ship, he said everybody sit tight. And then the captain jumped off the ship, and 300 people died on the ship. These were cases where, for whatever reason, people who could have very easily saved a lot of lives and were in that position had brain explosions and did the opposite of what they should do, which led to deaths. It's not clear that that's what happened here in Seoul. This looks like this was just a situation which, as Aaron is saying, could have been controlled and averted like they do in Japan, because there have been situations in the past where there wasn't proper crowd control and people did die. And you're right, they've got all these resources in Korea. Indeed, there's highly visible security, police, army, all over the place there, and it's quite intimidating at times. And you're right, if they had been using them to prevent this sort of a disaster, there's no question they have the resources to do it. They just obviously don't have the mindfulness to do it. And hopefully this will fix that. But obviously it's terribly late if 150 people have already died needlessly. So yeah, all of that. Yuri the Best, good to see you, Yuri the Best. Our man from Kiev, good to have you in here. So yeah, so yes, a news story here saying that maybe Seoul needs DJ police like Shibuya does, and yeah, I think that's a good thought. For all the time in Japan that people are kind of making fun of the DJ police in Shibuya, they've done a good job. I mean, now we can appreciate it. I mean, it's terrible we had to get it's one of those things you never want to get a reminder that this is necessary and that it's a good thing that we have it, right? You just want everyone to go through questioning whether this was ever necessary because nothing ever happens. That's the ideal. But unfortunately, we've found out that, yeah, maybe it is a good idea to have, good public relations and crowd control from the police. And, the Chunichi Shimbun saying perhaps that's what they could have used in Korea. So I think actually the headline on this was different before. Maybe it's been updated. But, you talk about a news story which you just know has something to do with Fukuoka. Yeah, a Fukuoka gangster from the Kudokai apparently is being accused of having carried out a murder in Kyoto, the head of the president of a gyoza company. And so when the Fukuoka police wanted to take the suspect to Kyoto to be questioned, they have to drive through Kitakyushu, which is like the Palermo of Japan. It's the headquarters of the Kudokai, who are the most violent, out of control Yakuza group in Japan. So apparently being afraid that while transporting him 500 kilometers from Fukuoka to Kyoto, that they might be ambushed by gangsters wanting to silence this person from saying who was involved in the plot to murder this gyoza company president. Apparently they deliberately drove around like an extra 11 hours or something ridiculous, out of the way. Police convoy took 11 hours to transport him because they wanted to avoid random attacks on public roads by gangsters trying to silence their suspect. Oh, how can you tell me that a story is about Fukuoka without telling me that a story is about Fukuoka? I love Fukuoka. Fukuoka is my original Japan hometown, and it is genuinely one of the nicest and best places in Japan with the best people, but with the worst organized crime gang, which fortunately is on the way out, and its heads, have been subject to pretty extreme punishments, actually, to death penalty punishments. So they're doing their best to shut it down, but still, yeah. I mean, it's nice to live in an age where when I came to Japan in the 90s, you would see stories about this in Osaka and in Tokyo and anywhere in Japan. Now you only see it in Fukuoka, which is still, it's an improvement, although it's not very good for Fukuoka. And that's it. Those are all the stories. And I'm like 1 minute away from time. So I've done pretty well, I think, as it goes for time. Final look through the comments. We've got Dan H saying, did I talk about the digital ID in Japan? It sounds so messed up and causes a lot of problems. You mean my number? I haven't talked about it lately. I actually applied for my number. In fact, I think I'm going to go pick it up myself tomorrow. They're sort of gradually making it inconvenient to not have, although, again, more data leaks seem to be routinely happening from government agencies everywhere, including last week. The tourism agency leaked the details of 10,000 people applying for economic support in the tourism industry. So, yeah, are they ready to have a social security number database? I'm not sure, but what can you do? But yeah, anyway, that is the show. Thank you for keeping me company. It's good to see you all. I hope that you're all doing well. Remember, get a humidifier and turn it on. I'm about to turn mine on so that my voice doesn't sound so raspy. I'll have to start singing like lounge jazz or something like that. I think with this, unless I drink some more water. Have a good week. Remember to follow me on Twitter, where when I'm not doing rugby commentary, I don't post quite as vigorously as I do on other occasions. Do take care of yourselves. Yeah, have a good one, and I'll see you next week. So, boom, peace. Ending stream.